This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
All right, you know it's going to be a heavy Lions show because, I mean, in off-season mode for the NFL, it still beats out the NBA and the NHL in the current state of Detroit sports. And the MLB, I guess. To be honest, how do you really focus on anything else? I guess we could start doing Michigan basketball.
I mean, we could, but...
A little early for the show?
Yeah, for sure. Look here, on my other podcast, we brought it up this week, so...
I think we're getting there. We definitely could talk Michigan basketball, but you know us, and I didn't even think about it until in the moment, Stroz.
Yeah, no, I mean... I'll be honest with you. So like when you're looking to kind of put like topics together for this show, the first thing I go to, I'll go to the Free Press and I'll go to sports and then I'll go to the Lions, or I'll go to ESPN and I'll go to the Lions. And I have to exhaust everything with the Lions before I move on to something else.
The thing is, it's so hard to do NBA or NHL or MLB right now. They're very sporadic in Detroit sports. Although I will say, I know Jeremy Grant trade talk is getting some love over there in Detroit. So it's going to be a heavy Lions show. Also, I think we got something fun planned for the middle. There was a question asked on Twitter. I guess, honestly, there wasn't a question asked. There was news.
You asked the question.
Well, I think
or you responded to it.
I think it should be asked. So was it Illinois that is allowing seniors to go back?
I thought it was Kansas. Was it Kansas or Kentucky? I thought it started with a K.
Jesus.
I'm gonna check your Twitter timeline. You just keep going. I'll get you the answer.
It was Kentucky. You had it right. I think there might have been another state as well, but Kentucky is allowing high school seniors to go back for one more year and let them play high school sports. I didn't play high school sports, but if you gave me this chance in the same scenario, I absolutely would have taken it. We're going to get into that. Stroz thinks I'm crazy. And at the end of the show, I think this is kind of a funny question, but I also think it's a fun one. Is QB at 7 a real possibility? Yeah, it's a fucking possibility, but we'll get to that. First,
I like when I present a topic for the show, and then you do the setup and the build for it. It's done like that. You do one. It's like, oh, look at this. Check this out.
Stroz, do you think there's a world where it's not a real possibility the Lions go QB? They just traded a franchise QB. Anybody in the world who tells you no, it's not a real possibility is clueless.
We're gonna get into it later in the show, B.
A favorite streamer of mine, Nick Merckx, today was debating if it would be a good trade for the Chiefs to trade Patrick Mahomes for 3 firsts, 2 seconds, and Julio Jones. What are we doing here? That's what it makes me think of. Anybody who knows anything says, shut the hell up. That's how I look at this question, Stroz. Shut the hell up. But
you're the worst.
The first question we want to get into today, there are reports it's going to be a bloodbath in NFL. I don't even call it, I guess, cap casualties, with the cap going down and fairly significantly this season, something that basically doesn't happen in professional sports. It almost always goes up. You're going to see a lot of cap casualties, and I think it begs the question. Now, the Lions are not in a good cap spot, but they're also not in cap hell like a lot of teams are, and they're in a new regime, and new regimes often mean very quick makeovers. It doesn't mean trying to win in year one necessarily, but changing the entire look of the franchise. And I think it's fair to ask, what do you want to see out of it? Would you like to see the Lions kind of lay low and avoid the year one makeover? Would you like to see them aggressive in an unusual, what will likely be very strong free agency class, especially veteran free agency? What is it you want to see out of it?
I think the best thing for this organization is the lay low. Look, we both agree this team is going to be bad next year. They're not going to be a good team. And I think we both agree that it's going to take probably a year, maybe 2 years for this team to really get good. Now, I think it sucks the way this is going to happen because, like you said, it's going to be a jam-packed free agency class. There's going to be a ton of big names out there. I just don't think the Lions should get involved with any of them. I think the Lions should kind of lay back, lay low, get a couple guys. Look, I like what they're doing right now. They went out and they signed Terrell Williams on a 1-year deal.
You like that?
I think I do.
Style of it.
Yeah, because there's no risk.
Love it, but the 1-year deal I can respect. I feel that.
Right, there's zero risk, and you're bringing a guy in who has to prove something. So I would like to see them go out in free agency and do a lot more of that. Get guys in here who have something to prove, do a 1-year deal, maybe a 2-year deal, nothing long-term for really anybody, because when this team's finally able to win, those guys are going to go away. That's part of the reason why I don't want to bring back any free agents from this team. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's a couple guys I want to bring back, but like I don't want to bring back Kenny Galladay. I don't want to bring back Romeo Okwara. I don't want to bring back any of those big names.
I understand Galladay because Galladay is probably going to be expensive. I don't see. I think it's a little bit. I don't know what the word I want to use is. I caution you from being too adamant. You don't want to bring back, as you called them, big name free agents. I would call them the good players that were on your team. I understand it doesn't. Go ahead.
I love Romeo Okwara. I do. I like if there was one guy I did have to bring back, you're like, hey, you have to bring somebody back. It would be him. But I don't know if lacing him with a $10 million deal and signing him for the next 4 or 5 years is necessarily the best thing for this organization, especially when you've already highlighted the cap situation.
I do understand the hesitancy. I'm not saying that you should be gung-ho on bringing those guys back, but I would caution you on saying, like, I have no interest in bringing those guys back, especially Romeo Okwara. I don't know that he's a guy who is definitely going to get paid, who's going to have money shelled out. I think it's conceivable you could bring him back on an affordable deal. Galladay, I'm a little bit more concerned about. I think you asked the question when we were trying to plan this topic. Do you want them to franchise tag Kenny Galladay? And I'm not going to say, like, much like the draft, I'm very open to free agency. Kenny Galladay is a good football player, and so I'm open to bringing him back. Romeo Okwara is a good football player, and so I'm open to bringing him back. I think I would rather overspend bringing guys like that back than going after vet free agents.
Guys who are a little bit younger, you kind of know what they are.
I definitely don't want to see them be over aggressive like a team who thinks that they can win it all now in free agency. But I would say I think there's value in some overhaul type moves. Like Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn caught a lot of flack for bringing in their own guys. But I think that's unfair because you know who didn't catch flack for doing the same thing? Martin Mayhew and Jim Schwartz. And they brought in – the difference was they brought in good players. You know, Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn failed because they brought in bad players. But how big were Kyle Vandenbosch and Stephen Tulloch in changing, you know, the 0-16 Lions into a playoff team? They were crucial.
They were huge, yeah.
And so I don't want to write off the possibility, if this regime thinks there's a guy like that out there, to go out and get him.
I agree with you. I do. And I see what you're saying. My concern and my hesitancy is I'm not sure that this organization knows exactly what it needs right yet, right? And I say that because there are so many. You've already talked about the bloodbath that's coming up, right? I believe it's March 17th is when the league year starts, and basically you're going to start hearing a whole bunch of names getting released and cut. So you gotta cut a bunch of guys. You got to see what the cap structure is going to look like, and then you got to head into this draft, and you've got to try to put your team together. Now we both agree they need help at the wide receiver position. So can you go out there and they've already made a move to bring in Terrell Williams, right? 1-year deal. I've already said I like that. It's basically
the least sexy but sensible deal the Lions have ever made.
I think so.
It's so,
really do.
It's so boring, but I understand it.
Like honestly, it really is. Like when it came across my phone, I looked and I was like, okay, that makes sense. I was like, how much money? I was like, how much money and how long? And I was like, 1 year, $6 million is the most he can make. Okay. Like it's not sexy at all. It really isn't, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you need for this first year because they've got so many holes. There's got to be so much of a flip to this roster that everything just has to kind of make sense. And I like seeing a move like the Terrell Williams deal just because it shows me that this front office gets it, right? It understands it. They're not going out and bringing in, I don't know, name any wide receiver from the Rams that, you know, Brad Holmes has a relationship with. They're not going out and grabbing those guys. They're grabbing guys who can make an impact. Now, I get it. Terrell Williams did have a relationship with the offensive coordinator on this team. I understand that. And I see that. But it's a deal that makes sense. And if you have
a 1-year deal. I think that's the big part of it.
Exactly.
It's not a long-term investment.
Exactly.
I don't think there's anything wrong with the occasional long-term investment on a guy. I guess here's what I would say. I'm fine with giving a long-term investment into somebody that you know, a member of the staff knows. I just don't want to give Tyrell Williams 3 years because the coach knows him.
Oh, for sure.
That's not now like Trey Flowers would be an example where people crushed that right away, and I didn't think that was necessarily fair. And he hasn't performed, but I just didn't think it was fair to crush it because that was a guy who was a high-end free agent. And you know what? I'll also say this. While I don't think it's fair how much criticism they got for doing it while Martin Mayhew and Jim Schwartz didn't, it's understandable why you don't want the Patriot rejects. I don't know that you're going to say that about the Chargers or the Rams or the Saints. There's no organization who's done a better job realizing when it's time to cut bait on a guy than the Patriots.
Yep.
I listen to you, and we have this conversation, and I kind of find a theme in the way we look at the Lions this offseason. I think we have very similar thoughts on things, but you are more quick to be concerned than me. And what I mean by that is in this case, like we both want to have some room for flexibility, right? Like we both want them, we're open to the idea of them going out and signing a franchise guy or two to kind of help change the culture, like the Kyle Vanden Bosch and Stephen Tulloch for Jim Schwartz. But I think you're more likely to jump and not like that move when it happens than I am. Not to say you definitely will, but I think you're more quick to go that route than I am. And I think it's the same thing with the draft. I think with the draft, we both look at it and say, okay, I want best player available, but you go, I don't want Devonta Smith or Jamar Chase. I definitely don't want Kyle Pitts.
And it's funny, if you hear everybody talk, you hear the coaching staff talk, you hear the front office talk, there's a possibility he's on their board. It's weird. It is really weird, man. Well, and I know it's all talk.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what we're going to get into in number 7. I don't give a shit what any of them say. I couldn't think of anything more meaningless than what coaches and GMs tell you heading into the draft.
Let me ask you this. So this is a guy who I think we talked a little bit about him last week, really and truly. But if they were to go out, because we already talked that they need help at wide receiver, and I think Allen Robinson is an upgrade over Kenny Golladay. How much so? Debatable, but I think he's an upgrade as a wide receiver over Kenny Golladay. Would you go out? Would you sign him to a $20 million deal when you could get Kenny Golladay for $17 million? Or is that a move where you would just kind of be like, no, not that move at all?
Sorry, who did you say one more time?
Allen Robinson, Chicago Bears. Used to play at Orchard Lake, St. Mary's, wide receiver.
I know who he is.
Okay, just giving everybody else the rundown.
Damn, it's tough. I think I would be okay with it.
Okay.
I think, and this is me speculating and maybe being stupid, I think Allen Robinson is a guy who we've never gotten to see his ceiling because he's been with bad quarterbacks his entire career. And for that reason, I don't know if he'd even want to come here. I don't know if Jared Goff is the guy he wants throwing to him. I mean, he'd be better than Mitch Trubisky or Blake Bortles or Gardner Minshew. I don't think he ever had Gardner Minshew, but regardless, he'd be better than any quarterback that he's had. But I think he's a guy whose ceiling could be much higher than we recognize. And so those are the kind of guys you do want to get in free agency. You want to get the guys who Golden Tate would be a great example. Sure, they looked like good receivers, and Allen Robinson looks better than Golden Tate ever did in Seattle. But the ceiling in Detroit for Golden Tate was so much higher than it ever was in Seattle. And I think Allen Robinson with the right team could be that guy.
So does it make me a hypocrite where I don't think I would be all that upset if they went and they signed Allen Robinson? But Kenny Golladay, I'd be furious if they franchise tagged him.
Well, where that's unfair is a franchise tag is a non-commitment. Mm-hmm. You're not getting Allen Robinson for 1 year.
No, you're right. It would probably be something along the lines of 4 or 5 year.
I don't think it makes you a hypocrite, but I don't agree with what. Or I'm sorry. I don't know. I would rather have Allen Robinson than franchise tag Kenny Golladay, but the franchise tag Kenny Golladay would not upset me because it's a 1 year deal.
I gotcha. And that makes sense, right? Because it's a 1 year deal. Prove it to me. But it's just, I think it's the cost, because what if they franchise tag them? I think it's going to be like $16 million, maybe $17 million, somewhere right around there. And I'm on what is it, Spot Rack right now, and I'm looking at their cap space, and they're like right in the middle of the league for how much money they have right now. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when they end up doing their purge. But I can't think that they're going to have a ton of money to really play with. And this is something I want to give you credit. I really want to give you credit because last year around this time, or maybe it was right before the football season started, it was right when the football season started. You gave Bob Quinn a ton of credit because you were like, he's done a great job managing this cap, and everything going on with COVID, the cap is going to roll back. You did that. You nailed it.
Everything said and done. When you look back at Bob Quinn, he was absolutely a failure. But there is one thing he did really well. He didn't hamstring the organization. He didn't sign bad, like overwhelmingly bad contracts. That's not to say he had misses. I think he probably put Trey Flowers in the miss category. You definitely put Desmond Trufant, who they just cut, in the miss category.
Yeah,
he traded a lot of great players. But the one thing he didn't do, you're not looking at the Lions and saying, how the hell are they going to get out from under that contract, this contract? And bad GMs do that. So, yeah, I did see that. I did see that he left them in a good spot this year. And it's come through. It's not a great spot, but there are teams in much, much, much worse spots than you. I want to move on from this topic, but the last thing I want to say, and I'll let you answer if you have anything to say. If I had any control, I would bring in somebody. And I think a vet, not a guy I want to hand out a 5-year deal to be here at the, the deep part of the run. But if you can get a Kyle Vanden Bosch type, who I think only spent 2 years, maybe 3 with the Lions, if you could go out, and especially, I'd like to see it on defense. The defense needs to be totally reworked. At least the offense has an offensive line. At least the offense probably has a running back. The defense, I'm not sure if anybody on this defense really matters. I'd love to have somebody who you look at and say, this guy is what we want our defense to look like. And I really believe, maybe it's because I only know these 3 regimes, but I look at Kyle Vanden Bosch as the dude. Kyle Vanden Bosch is exactly what Jim Schwartz wanted to build on defense. Mm-hmm. And I'd be happy to go and get that guy for this regime.
I'm looking at some, just kind of going through free agent names.
Well, the thing is, the reason I wanted to do this topic, because there might be good free agents, but vets are going to be cap casualties. There are guys that you're going to look at and go, damn, I can't believe that guy got cut, who aren't free agents yet.
What about a guy like Olivier Vernon?
Sure. No, I mean, that's
30 years old, a DN.
Is he only 30?
Yeah.
In my head, he's 35. So I was going to say,
I know there's a lot. I feel like there's a lot of wear and tear on that body.
I was going to say he might be a little older than I'd like. But yeah, that's the perfect kind of example. Can you get him for 2 years? Maybe 3. But just a guy who you look at and say, this is how we want our defense to look moving forward. Is he going to bite some kneecaps or not?
I want to get your opinion real quick before we move on into the second segment. What do you think about that J.J. Watt deal?
I don't have a whole lot of thoughts about it.
Okay, I was just curious.
I
was surprised he picked Arizona, to be honest with you. It kind of makes sense because Hopkins is there and they're boys, but I was surprised he picked Arizona.
Well, so I would say a couple things. I think that absolutely plays a factor. I also think he probably thinks he makes a bigger difference than he does. Mm-hmm. So he looks at it and goes, hey, man, Arizona's close. Add an elite pass rusher and look at the difference it makes. I think that they probably paid a little more than I would have liked to, but he's still a really good player who's added to a team who's fringe playoff. I don't love for him or for them the division they're in. I do wonder if they were willing to pay him more than anybody else, and that played a big role too. Obviously, he's not only worried about money, or he would have stayed in Houston, but it's hard to believe there isn't a better team who would have also been interested. I think I heard he picked the Cardinals over 9 other teams. I don't have strong opinions one way or the other. I think it'll be interesting. I do think he'll make them better, but I just don't think he's the franchise changer he was at one time.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think you're right. His assessment of himself probably a little bit higher than where he's actually at right now.
It should be. And you think every guy in the NFL probably thinks that way.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
you want to go back to high school, though, so let's talk about it.
Well, you're lucky that this is what we're talking about. Because I read some Taco Bell news today that screamed middle spot of the practice squad.
I'm kind of interested in the Taco Bell news.
I don't want to get into the topic, but it's really funny the way my brain has shifted on it from hungry Brendan to full Brendan. So Taco Bell is testing fried cheese. I don't know what it's called. Fried cheese curds.
Okay.
And it's funny because I read this at maybe 2:00. Starting to get a little bit hungry. I usually eat as soon as I get home around 3:15. And I was like, man, I really want to try those. I got home. I ate dinner. I'm pretty stuffed. I overate. And now I'm like, oh my God, fried food from Taco Bell? I don't want anything fried from Taco Bell ever again in my life. I didn't have Taco Bell for dinner. It's just the way my full brain thinks. Fried food from Taco Bell. I like my Taco Bell, but I'd say keep it out of the fryer.
Is Hangry Bee different than Full Bee?
I don't know that I always recognized it, but in this moment, fried cheese curds from Taco Bell sound awful. And 4 hours ago, they sounded pretty great. I
love how we're having revelations and breakthroughs.
I'm honestly, Stroz, I just had this thought now when I brought it up. I was like, how disgusting. And I know when I saw the pictures earlier, I wanted to try them.
You're like, man, that looks good. I
But
can't
we're
wait
not
to
gonna
get some of those.
We're not going to get deep into that at least yet. They're only testing them in like one restaurant, so they may never actually make it to market. But if they do, we'll have to wait till I get hungry and I'll try them. Yeah, so
Can't wait.
I was actually surprised I didn't get any answers on this question because I thought it was an interesting one. I did think I was in the vast minority of people. But imagine you go back to high school and you played sports, whatever sport it was. Or like me, you were in theater. And you go through freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, and then you just get screwed out of senior year because of COVID. And that happened to a lot of kids around the country. And I don't think anybody thought they'd get a chance to go back, but that's what Kentucky is allowing. If you want to go back for your senior year of high school to participate in sports, you're allowed to. And I think it's an interesting question. People, I mean, I know I loved my high school theater experience, but I know people who still hold on to high school football and their high school sports. And I'm not saying would you go back now, but if you had the same situation in high school, do you think you would have wanted to go back?
So I had a really good high school experience. My high school experience wasn't horrible by any means. It was a lot of fun, actually. And I wasn't any elite athlete. I wasn't great in any one sport. Thanks, B. Thanks a lot. I probably peaked somewhere. I probably peaked somewhere right around 7th, 8th grade with sports.
Hey, man, I batted cleanup in freshman baseball. I never touched the field again after that. But
so I don't know. When you asked this question, I was like, "Fuck no, I don't want to go back to high school." Like I remember my senior year, and I was like, I'm extremely happy that my mom moved us to where she moved us. For high school. Otherwise, I would have had to go to Pershing, and I probably would have got stabbed in the ear or the eyeball with a pencil. So I ended up going to high school in Oxford. And I had a great education from Oxford. And my senior year, everything I did my senior year was stacked towards helping me my freshman year of college. Everything was in motivation for that freshman year of college. And when I got to college, to say I kind of went a little off the rails, like I partied a bit in high school. I became the party monster in college. I loved college. I loved college so much. I spent 9 years in college. Like I spent way too much time in college. There is no way in hell I would ever go back to high school. And it's for whatever reason. If it was to sit down next to Abby Hale one more time, or to be able to take her to the school dance, because that was who my high school crush was. Like, she was amazeballs. She ended up spitting out 2 kids senior year, and she still looked fantastic. It was crazy. There's no way I would go back even for her. Not happening. Now, it's weird because my girlfriend was a pretty good athlete. She got a couple different scholarship offers, and if her knee wasn't all messed up, she probably would have went on to have a pretty good soccer career. And she was a 2-sport athlete.
Okay, hold on.
It's gonna be weird for her to.
I need to pause this. I don't mean to insult her, and I think you've said this before, but Stroz, there's something about soccer players. I've heard that from multiple soccer players, that if it wasn't for an injury that they would have played. There's a girl here in one of my friend groups who played college soccer who says the same thing. If it wasn't for my injuries, I would have played pro soccer.
Well, it just sounds like, I don't know. It sounds like it was pretty brutal, man. I don't know. Her knee's still messed up. It's pretty gross.
Does she think she would have played pro soccer?
I don't think she would have played. I don't think she thinks she would have played pro, but I think she would have.
Okay, that's what I thought you meant.
So she ended up getting with her
college career.
Yeah, with her bad knee, she ended up getting. I think she got like a D2 offer. If her knee was better, she probably would have got D1.
Okay, there were people. I thought you were saying professional career.
No, I don't think she would have played professional. I mean, she might have been one. You know how like the women's like soccer leagues, there's like some lower ones where they get paid, but like they don't really get paid. She probably could have played in that if she wanted to, but I don't know.
We don't need to break it down.
But
I just feel
here's
like
the thing. My whole thing is it's going to be interesting to get her reaction to all of this, because she normally sides with you on the podcast, and she probably would want to go back to high school with you.
See, I think I am in such a dramatic minority, and this is going to sound almost sad, but the truth is, I actually have liked life out of high school more than I ever thought I would, because I fucking loved high school. I think I'm built for high school. Like, I just want to talk to a million people all day, every day. Stroz.
I've never heard somebody. I am built for high school.
Give me another scenario, career, like hobby, whatever. Give me a single other example in life after high school where you have, and I went to a giant high school. I had a graduating class of like 900. Give me another example. Sterling Heights Stevenson.
Yeah, that's a big.
Give me another example anywhere where you can go 5 days a week and see the same people year after year after year after year, and you get to go and hang out with them 7-8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 15 years. Like, you build relationships with these people, and you know me. Like, I'll be honest, Stroz, I didn't even understand the idea of acquaintances until after high school. I consider all these people my friends. And if you use my high school definition of the word friend, I probably had 200 friends in high school. People that I looked forward to talking to, maybe not every day, but every week. Like, that world doesn't exist anywhere else. And like, I worried about that in high school and in college. Like, how the hell, like, is this going to be the best my life ever is? And I don't want to say it has been, but in that circumstance, it has. Like, your social life just can't exist that same way. And like, being an adult has been super fucking awesome. I love living by myself. I love getting to work on, like, in radio, and like, I've gotten to do so many freaking cool things that I'd never realized I'd get to do. But theater to this day is one of the best things I've ever done in my life. High school theater was amazing. And there's something special about senior year of sports, or in my case, theater. And it's so funny because there was a moment that popped up in my head, and I honestly have probably shared it on this podcast before. But it's from theater, and it kind of ties into being a senior. But I also think it's the meanest thing I've ever done in my life. And I want to share that because it speaks to what makes senior year so awesome. High school theater was much like sports in that the longer you're there, you do build a seniority. And it was like not just student-wise, like the teacher treated things differently. You were allowed to behave differently as a senior, as a junior, as a sophomore, whatever. And the way it worked, generally speaking, is stage managers were like in charge of everything. They were like, it was like basically they were the teacher when the teacher wasn't around. So most of them were all seniors. There might be a couple juniors. Well, senior year, very, very early on in the year, I think I'm hot shit. I'm a senior in theater. I've been in like 5 shows at this point. Got all these little kids who don't know what the fuck they're doing. And there's a junior stage manager who quite frankly, I'd never seen her before. I didn't know who she was. And she told me to be quiet. And I literally responded, "I'm sorry. Who are you?" And it wasn't just me like curiously asking. It was me saying, "Who are you to tell me to shut up?" I later apologized to her and like felt horrible about it. And honestly, she ended up being really cool. But it got to my head, the power of being a senior, that a stage manager told me to shut up. And I was like, nah, I don't know who you think you are telling me to shut up. I'm a senior, bitch.
Arrogant B. Who are you? Sit down.
No, hold on. I think it's very important to say, like, it started with "I'm sorry." It was like, hey, you three need to be quiet. And I'm sorry. Who are you? Honestly, I think it's the meanest thing I've ever done. And I'm thankful, like, me and her became really cool, like, later on, because she's a really cool person.
Do you still talk to her?
No.
Like, for
a couple years after high school.
Did it ever get brought up again?
Oh, yeah. So I didn't even apologize to her then, to be honest with you. In that moment, I thought I was hot shit. But later in the year when I got to know her and we were really cool, I was like, hey, do you remember me doing this? And she kind of laughed. And I was like, yeah, I'm really sorry that I did that. Like, that wasn't cool. And she's like, honestly, like, I agreed with you. Which she was wrong. Like, it doesn't make it okay. But she basically told me, she was like, yeah, no, you were right. Like, I shouldn't have been telling you to shut up.
That's interesting. That's funny. Like, that'll happen with some of my guy friends, even like buddies from high school. It'll still, like, things will just pop up where whatever you did when you were in high school just gets brought back up again.
I don't know how it came across my mind, and it had nothing to do with this topic. Just recently it came across my mind, and I thought about it, and I was like, I think it might be the meanest thing I've ever done. That's not to say I've never done anything worse, but just like that's just straight up mean. There's no reason to be that way, and I was.
I love how you're the most wholesome dude.
Now I laugh.
You're the most wholesome dude.
Funny because I thought I was hot shit.
That was the meanest thing I ever did. I had a bit of an ego, and I was a little bit arrogant. I thought I was tough shit. What?
Hold on. Let me step it back a little bit, because that might be building my own wholesome credit. It's the meanest thing I can ever remember doing. It's possible, and I'll even say probable. I've done meaner things, but the reason that stood out is
We're just built so different.
The reason that stood out to me, Stroz, as the meanest thing is because if I've been mean, like it's there's something that caused it, right? Like I was in a bad mood. Not that makes it okay, but like I was in a bad mood. I was mad about something. Like I took it out on somebody. That's mean, but it's different. This was completely like I wasn't even mad at her telling me to shut up. Like I was just like, I'm hot shit and I'm going to show off. Like that's what that was. And so it's less forgivable to me, but I was 17. So that part alone makes it, forgivable. But yeah, so I love the acting part of it, but I also like the being hot shit part of it. And so if I didn't get to experience that after having the seniors, be that way towards me for years, it would have sucked. I would have had a really hard time with that. In fact, the day before the first day of school my senior year, I remember having a literal nightmare about theater and like all my friends quitting theater. And it was like I woke up and I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy that wasn't real. Like that's how important theater was to me back then.
Were you friends with any of the upperclassmen when you were a freshman or a sophomore?
Oh, absolutely.
Were they dicks to you or no? Were some of them dicks to you?
I'm going to be honest with you, Stroz. Not very many people are dicks to me. And I don't
because you're so lovable and wholesome.
I think I
win
like
a giant Teddy Graham cracker.
I think I tend to win the lovable category. No, I don't really think so. There were some people who were maybe a little bit like maybe on the ignore side of things, like not worth my time. Mm-hmm. But it's not about being a dick necessarily. It's about having control. It's about like, in a school of 900 people, the theater group was, probably 150 deep. The teacher can't always be controlling things. She's working with a group of 30 and there's still 120 people. It's not about being a dick so much as it is being the one in charge. Like, hey, here's what we're going to do right now. And like that for seniors meant towards the kids they didn't like, they could be dicks. But also generally speaking, the way it worked, and I'd say I had kids like this. There were kids I stayed a dick to, but it's because I thought they deserved it. There were kids who show up and like just think that they got to walk in and be hot shit. Those kids were the ones who seniors were mean to, and I was mean to those kids too.
I love this. There's a hierarchy in high school theater.
I don't think it's that different than sports.
It's not. It's really not. It's not. I think in just about every class, right? So some of my most fun times in high school were in our CAD class, and basically Jason Boyer, when I was I think I was a sophomore, he was the guy who gave me my nickname, and Jason Boyer was basically the head honcho of CAD class. Like that was his kingdom. He ran it. It was cool. Mike Dawson was right next to him as his number 2. That was his lieutenant. And then the rest of us all just kind of fell in line, and it's what it was. So like I get it. Makes sense. Well,
I thought you were going to make fun of me. We're going to move on.
I was supposed to make fun of you.
Do you have any making fun of me you would like to do before we get there?
No, we're good. I think you being pumped up about theater class is good enough.
Cute.
Yes, really cute. Like I said, you're a Teddy Graham, bro.
Do you ever look at me and think, man, he's cute?
Yeah, like sometimes when we talk about stuff like this, I'm like, God, I just want to pinch his cheeks. I'm just like, how did this guy and this guy, how did we end up crossing paths to do something like this? Because I don't want to say we're polar opposites, but man, we are just different as people.
On polar opposites. All right. QB at 7. What you ask me the question since I set you up in such a poor light. Go ahead, you do it, Stroz.
So Brad Holmes comes out the other day, and he's having his little presser with the media, and he basically says that there's a bunch of quarterbacks in this draft that he really likes.
Yeah.
There's a smorgasbord of quarterbacks, and they all do different things. So depending on what you like, we got tall
there
could be a guy there for you.
We got skinny ones. We got fat ones. Some of them are real thick.
Guys with cannons for arms. And, drafting a quarterback is a real possibility at 7 for this team. Obviously, that's what he said. His words, not mine. Now, the question is, do you really believe that a quarterback at 7 is a legit possibility, yes, or do you think it's just smoke?
Yes, I think. Actually, let me do you one better.
Okay.
The answer to the first question, is it a legit possibility? Yes. The answer to the second question, is it just smoke? Yes.
Okay.
So here's the thing. He's not telling us anything we don't know. This draft class has potential to be the most quarterbacks. I guess I don't want to go there because we just had the one with Lamar Jackson. What was it? Lamar Jackson, Josh Rosen, Josh Allen. I want to say that one had 5. But this one could too.
Was Kyler Murray wasn't.
I don't think so.
No, not that one.
Because that was Josh Rosen was first overall, then Kyler Murray went the following year. Or not first, but first with the Cardinals.
Sam Darnold, I think, was.
Yeah, Sam Darnold was in that class. That one had 5. This one could too. Like, we know that. So all Brad Holmes is saying is what we know to be true. There's a lot of quarterbacks in this draft who are going to be drafted to be starting quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a possibility for the Lions? Absolutely. I think if you don't have a franchise quarterback, it's a possibility every damn year. But I don't think he's like him telling you he likes them really means anything.
Yeah, well, I don't think it means anything either. But I think what you can take out of this is he's a guy who's doing his job. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think a quarterback at 7 is a possibility this year. I just don't. Looking at this quarterback class, yeah, there's a ton of them. Will there be a guy that he's in love with at 7 still on the board? I don't think so. I mean, not unless he thinks Trey Lance is the second coming of Patrick Mahomes. I don't think so. I just don't see it. So I think what he's doing is he's protecting his investment at 7. And this is something that Bob Quinn deserves a ton of criticism for. Last year with them at 3, Bob Quinn basically came out and told you that he didn't like Tua, that he didn't like a quarterback. They don't need a quarterback. They've got Matt Stafford. And basically showed his hand and said, hey, we're taking Okuda at 3, and that's the way it's going to go. Instead of trying to leverage and position himself to get more for his 3rd overall pick. I think what you have here with Brad Holmes is he's doing that. He's saying, look, if there's a quarterback here that we really like, we're taking him. And there's a bunch of guys out here that we really like. Honestly, letting teams like Carolina know, teams like Washington know that if we're still on the board, your quarterback might not be there.
So
and I like that. I like that about
what was that statement. I agree with you. Like, that statement was far more about presenting that option to teams that, like, hey, if you got a quarterback you want, you're gonna have to jump ahead of us or trade with us because we will take him. I think that was less about telling you that he may go quarterback and way more about trying to force somebody's hand to overpay for one. But I don't think you can rule out any team falling in love with any first round talent. Like, you might not love Trey Lance, but how many times have we seen a team grab a guy, like go up even, and grab a guy who wasn't rated that highly? Like, it's just a part of the game at quarterback. And
Patrick Mahomes is the prime example of it.
Didn't the Rams trade up for Jared Goff?
They did. Well, yeah, they moved up a ton to get Jared Goff, but Goff was supposed to go 1 or 2.
Yeah, no, you're right. He was considered a top prospect, but there's 3 guys who wouldn't be considered a reach at all in the top 10 by 7. Fields, and Wilson.
Lawrence goes. Okay, Fields. Yeah.
None of those guys would be considered a reach, and maybe they don't get there, but none of those guys would be considered even a little bit of a reach.
How do you feel about Justin Fields?
I'm a Justin Fields fan, but somebody did point out to me. So Chris Sims, if you saw, had him very low on his list, and Chris Sims has been on about quarterbacks in recent history.
Yes.
So I mean, I that means something to me when a guy who has a history of hitting says that.
So my big concern with Justin Fields, I think he's got great legs. I think he's got a great arm. I don't like his decision making. It's just at times it's very questionable. And what he does in the college game, he's going to get bit in the pro game with it. So he makes me nervous. I've kind of fallen out of love with him, and I'm not as high on him anymore. So like for me, when I look at it, right, and I think this is kind of where I get into a little bit of trouble, and I think this is where me and you end up running into a lot of conflict, because in my head I'm like, okay, cool, Justin Fields isn't even there anymore. Obviously, he's still going to be there, and a team like Atlanta could take him, or a team like, I don't think the Jets will do it, but a team like the Jets could possibly do it at 6. You know what I'm saying? So there's the ability that he could go in the top 5, top 6, but for me, really, it's like a 2-horse race. It's Trevor Lawrence and it's Wilson out of BYU. So it's, I don't know.
But you're saying that, but the current thoughts, I would say, when you any mock or any big board,
Fields is in the top 10 for sure.
And so for the thought that the Lions could like him and he could possibly be there, to like rule that out, it just doesn't seem reasonable to completely rule it out. I really believe that there isn't a position off the board, not just for me, for the Lions.
For the Lions, I agree with you. I agree,
including quarterback.
Including quarterback. I don't think they're going to take it off the board. I think it's a lot of smoke.
You just don't think the guys that they want will be there.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
To me, it's too hard to judge what they want.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I find a guy like what really sucks is we don't have the underwear Olympics, right? So that blows. We don't have the combine.
It's really not that big a deal.
I mean, for me it is because I love watching it. It's where I get a lot of intel and get a lot of insight watching these guys do random ass drills that super athletes get to do. There's something about watching a 330-pound man run a 40 in 5 seconds where I'm like, damn. And my ass is out there struggling to do it in 7. I'm just saying, B. I'm just saying. And sometimes every now and then there's a hog that flops out and gets bounced off a thigh from here to there. I just took it there for you.
Yeah, it's got to be slipped in somewhere.
That's right. Slip her in there. Great verbiage. Look at you.
It was very professional.
I feel like you've come so far, B. Look at you. I'm so proud of you.
All right. Well, I don't know that we need to have any more conversation here. I think we disagree. I think sometimes you want to make me think we disagree before the show, and then we get into it. And it's like, nah. I think you're just trying to push some buttons.
There's always like one or two topics where we're like staunchly opposed, and then there's a topic like this where I think we're on opposite sides of the line, but we're both very close to the middle.
And our staunchly opposed topic on this one was, would you go back to high school?
Right. Exactly. It was a good show. This was a good show. Look, you were really upset going into the show, and look at you now.
I'm still really upset.
I know, but hey, you did a really good job. You're smiling. You're happy.
If you couldn't hear it, I've been pissed all episode. We're not going to get into why.